Well, the number of audience now is increasing. You can hear me quite well, right?
No problem. Very good.
Mm-hmm. Oh, now we have 10 participants.
It's still, I can see that it's still on, live streaming on YouTube, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's live on YouTube. Live streaming, yeah. Again, good afternoon to everyone. Thank you for being here with us. The webinar will start in 1 minute. Right, would you please read this important notice? This event will be recorded. If you do not wish to be photographed, so please contact our technician at the email shown on the screen. And this is our webpage. Yes, okay. So, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for sacrificing your weekend time to join us. But your sacrifice will be this will be a very, very rewarding experience for you, because today's talk is very, very exciting, a very exciting talk. By the way, should I introduce myself? Sorry, I'm Professor Vivian Wu from Asia University. And today's webinar will be curated by APSCE, Asia Pacific Society in Computer and Education. For Computer and Education, the APSCE Tail 6. So that's the curator. And thank you very much for the technician. And thank you very much to Professor Longxiang Wang from in Singapore. And today's talk is virtual reality and language education, research trend and the teaching practice. And before we start today's webinar, I would like to introduce today's speaker to you. Today's speaker is Professor Chunping Zheng from Beijing University of Posts and Telecommunication. She is Associate Dean of the Department of Foreign Language at the School of Humanities and Director of Center for Research and Technology Enhanced Language Learning. Besides that, she is also awardee of the Outstanding University Teacher in Beijing Municipal and the Beijing Higher Education Young Elite Teacher Project. She is a very, she has already published extensively on numerous top quality international journals, including textbooks and journal articles and monograph. and she's also the guest editor for Education and Technology in Society and on the editorial board for the Journal of China Computer Assisted Language Learning. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, would you please join me? Let's welcome today's speaker, Professor Chunping Zheng. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
the microphone to Professor Zheng.
Thank you, Professor Wu. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so I'm going to share my...
Sorry to interrupt you. I forgot to announce very important. If you do have questions for Professor Zheng, you can use the Q&A feature at display at the bottom of your screen. Just 问与答 Q&A, and also you can use chat. And Professor will talk for 15 minutes and will leave the last minutes for Q&A. And Professor Zheng, you can also check if you do have time. You can check from time to time the questions posted on the question area.
Problem.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, no problem. So I shall share my screen first and to check whether it's okay now. Can you see the screen?
Yes.
Okay. So thank you very much, Professor Wu, for your very nice introduction. And I also would like to extend my appreciation to the APSCE team, Professor Wang, and also the technical expert for coordinating this webinar. It's my great honor to participate. Thank you very much. So I would like to give a very brief self-introduction. My name is Chunping from Beijing University of Posts and Telecommunications. So in today's talk, the topic is virtual reality and the language education. I'm going to share what we have done in recent years and to share with all the audience online. And maybe in the future, some people may watch this video, the recorded video, about the research trend and teaching practice that not only we reviewed, but also something that we are conducting now. Okay, so in today's talk, it mainly focuses on these 6 aspects. So the 4 parts, the first 4 parts about our literature review studies, and also I'm going to share what we have done at my university, that is BUPT. It's C in VR, and the final part is a very brief summary. So first of all is about research background, and I'm sure not all the today's participants or maybe people online are quite familiar with VR. So I'm going to give a very brief introduction to VR supported environments and related technologies, and our recent review studies as well. So what is VR? According to the encyclopedia, virtual reality or VR is the use of computer modeling or simulation technologies to enable people to interact with an artificial 3D virtual visuals or visual or other sensory environment. So if the user, they want to achieve very immersive experience, usually they need to rely on certain types of interactive devices. So as you can see in this picture, for example, the goggles, the gloves or headsets. And sometimes if you want to achieve the fully immersive experience, maybe sometimes you need to wear the body suits. When we talk about VE or virtual environments, which is a kind of virtual world, supported by VR, it usually refers to an immersive 3D and multimedia. It's not only text-based, but also voice and video-based, so it's multimedia. And the different people can participate in the environment, so it's multi-person simulation environments. And in that type of environment, people can adopt their own so-called alter ego, which means a second self. In the virtual world, we usually call them avatars. So they can use the avatars to interact with the world, in real time. The very preliminary form of VR is actually called Moo. It's a text-based and 2-dimensional online virtual reality system developed developed, I think, around in the 1970s. So based on Move, people can connect with multi users online at the same time for collaborative communication. But we all know that with the advancement of technologies, particularly the computer modeling and the simulation technologies, so the VR experience has evolved very quickly, from not that immersive to semi-immersive to fully immersive experience. And we summarized certain types of applications or spaces that supported VR. I think that the first and also a very popular one today is Second Life. It's more like an open social virtuality. And beside that, Second Life, we also have the World of Warcraft. It's more like a 3D gaming spaces. And some scholars, they are also quite interested in, designing a kind of educational space or for educational purposes in Second Life. So there will also be some, online environments specifically designed to support education or language education. Because we all know that Second Life or World of Warcraft at the very beginning of its development, it's for entertainment or for the users to achieve, the entertaining purposes or the purposes of communication, right? Socializing. But for those online environments specifically designed to support educational objectives, it's more like self-designed or purposeful spaces, VR spaces. And then after VR, we also have another variation of VR. It's called AR or mixed reality. And more recently, we have SVVR. Later, I'm going to talk a little bit about SVVR, for example, like Google Expeditions. And in year 2021, there's another buzzword that is metaverse. So today, I'm also going to introduce a little bit about metaverse. To give you an example, actually this year, the first IC4 was held by the Education University of Hong Kong. And there's a commercial here. And next year, in 2023, it will be held at the Beijing Normal University. So all the participants today, or maybe the future participants, you're welcomed to submit your abstract to this conference, the second IC4. But when the first IC4 at the closing ceremony of the first IC4, the hostess of first IC4 tried to hand over the conference badge to the host of the second IC4. So they used the virtual reality to help them to hand over the conference badge, virtually. So I prepared a kind of video for you to understand how VR works in such kind of event.
Dr. Lu, please hold it.
Thank you.
Thank
wow,
you
it's a
very
very
much.
beautiful and shining token.
Okay.
I wish you a big success in the next year's IC4.
So,
Thank you.
Professor,
Thank you.
Can you see the video and hear the sound, right?
Yes, both.
Okay.
Thank you. I can hear very well both.
Thank you. So this is actually a kind of a Zoom conference. So the both participants, they had their own avatars, and then they can, actually hand over the badge, virtually in such kind of conference room.
Thank you, Dr. Song.
Okay, we shall continue. So compared with VR, AR is a little bit different because it involves overlaying the digital information onto the physical world. Sometimes the users, usually they need to use some cameras of a mobile phone or some tablets to get the information, enhanced by AR. So this is one of my graduate students, and she was actually interacting with an AR book, in my classroom. So this is an AR book. So use some, mobile phones, the cameras, from the cameras that you can see that my student is interacting with the dinosaur in the physical world. So there's no dinosaur actually in the physical world, but with the AI technology, it can help the users or the learners to interact with the objects in the AI book. Here, I also prepared some other videos, for example, that's made by Google. So as you can see, all these objects actually does not exist, in the real world, but with the AR technology, the teachers or the technical experts, they can overlay the digital information in the physical world. Okay. And more recently, we call it SVVR, Serial Video-Based Virtual Reality, which means the technical experts, they can work with the teachers or the researchers to use the 360-degree cameras to videotape, the real and authentic environment. I prepared a video for you. So the kids, they are playing and they are speaking Japanese. Right? So actually, you can use different angles, to immerse yourself in that real environment. So that's totally different from the simulation environment. There's another a video about the Osborne House in Canada. It's produced by Google as well.
Well, my name is Michael Hunter, and I'm the curator here at Osborne. Queen Victoria and Prince Albert were very young when they
So you can change the resolution, because at the very
first came to Osborne. They had married 3 years previously, and at this stage, of course, they had started a family. They already had 3 children, and so they were looking for a private family home away from the hurly-burly of London. And it was here at Osborne that Queen Victoria and Prince Albert could get outside, swim on the beach, play with their children, and they would spend around 3 to 4 months of every year here at Osborne. Some of their happiest times were spent here. Prince Albert was his own architect for the house. He didn't employ an architect. He had the bright ideas. He very much wanted an Italian-looking house.
The scenes also change. So you can not only stand outside the house, but also get inside.
Well, we've left the splendour of the Italian terraces outside and moved into the house, and we're now transported to India, the Darbar room.
Okay, due to the time limitation, I'm not going to show all the video, but as you can see, it's totally different from the simulated, environment supported by VR. This environment is supported by SVVR, and it's not simulation, it's the real environment. Okay. I still remember that in year 2019, I visited the Chinese University of Hong Kong, and there's a very interesting lab at that university, and their project was funded by Jockey Club, and their VR project is for enhancing Chinese language literacy. So there are 2 different types of teaching modes. One is traditional teaching of writing, and the other is VR-based teaching of writing. So with the SVVR, students can observe and use the knowledge that they gained from the VR environment, and then they can create from sensing, experiencing, and finally write their own compositions Chinese compositions based on their observation. Here I, snapshot some of the kind of moments in the video. This is the 360-degree cameras. So the technical team, the technical experts, they work with the teachers and the researchers and to select certain local areas and use the cameras to videotape the environment, and then they will go back to the lab and to make some editing and to produce the final learning material for the students. And students, they can use the headsets or the goggles, to immerse themselves in the area. So I still remember they picked up Shenshui-Bu as a local, very unique local area for the learners to write their experience and their feelings on that area. And after watching or immersing themselves in that kind of experience of the environment, and they wrote their compositions. There's a kind of, introductory video on YouTube, but it's a little bit long, so I will recommend the address to you, and you can watch it later. And these days, I think that metaverse has already become a buzzword, right? Metaverse refers to a 3D dimensional virtual world. So basically, it's more like a VR supported, but sometimes it does not, need to rely on the VR. But basically, it's a 3-dimensional virtual world. The avatars can engage not only, for some social or cultural exchanges, but also political and economic, activities. So it's a new era of digital connectivity and virtual reality experience, and also e-commerce. So as you can see, different companies in different countries had already, invested a lot in metaverse. And I'm sure that you have heard the news that Facebook has already changed the name of its company to Meta, right? So if we compare the metaverse-based virtual world with Second Life, the current metaverse is based on the social value that the digital natives, which means the generation of people who were born, in a kind of environment with ubiquitous technologies, and they cannot actually distinguish the online or offline selves because almost they are the same, right? And the real and the unreal almost coexist in every people's life. So compared with the traditional virtual world, metaverse tends to be based on the open platforms. That platforms can allow users to develop and share their content and applications. And at the same time, it offers users the opportunity to earn money. So it's not only a place for socializing or for communicating, but also it's a place maybe they can earn money and to have their own business and get some other forms of rewards, for creating or sharing the content. I'm not sure whether you have watched the movies called Ready Player One, 头号玩家 in Chinese. I was really impressed by the first, several seconds in the movie, so we can watch it.
Get ready for the field of real. That's what. No pain, no gain.
Pizza, guys.
Hello, Wade.
Hello, Miss Gilmore.
What's the matter? Life getting you down?
Okay, so only several seconds. At the very beginning of that movie, so you can see that the lady's actually, she's wearing a kind of goggle to practice boxing, right? And we even have the Pizza Hut, delivery drone, which means that in the future, we do not need to rely on the delivery man, all right? And the kids and also the gentlemen, they were interacting with certain kind of games, in the virtual world. So that's very typical examples of metaverse. Some scholars has proposed the different layers of metaverse. For example, at the very bottom, there's some infrastructure, for example, based on the telecommunications like 5G or 6G, cloud or GPUs. And then some computer technologies like human interaction, decentralization. But at the very top of the layer of metaverse is the experience. So I think most of the users, we are in at the very top of this layer. For example, in our daily lives, we engaged in games or socializing, esports, or some theater experience, or even shopping, right? For example, go to the cinema, you can use VR or metaverse to enjoy, different kind of, listening and watching experience. And for playing different types of games. And, for example, in Facebook, they are kind of promoting the online conferencing mode, with different avatars in the metaverse. And Park and Kim, this year, they made a very systematic literature review. I think that's a very well-written article. In their book, in that article, they made a kind of a taxonomy, of the metaverse. And I really want to call your attention, to pay attention to these two aspects. The first one is about user interaction, and the second is about the metaverse applications. Because for the first part or the second or the other parts, they are mostly related to computer technologies or hardwares or software components. But for the user interaction, as you can see, the top, in this category is language interaction, and then multimodal, multitask, and embodied interaction. And as for language learning, we all know that language learning is, in its very essence, it's a social interaction. Okay, so I think that we language teachers and the learners can have a lot of possibilities using metaverse. And one of the applications of metaverse, besides games, office, and socializing or marketing, the education. So language education may also become a very, promising area for the application of metaverse. So if we put these different terms, in this reality, virtuality continuum proposed by Milgram, and his colleagues in the 1990s. On one end of this continuum is virtual environment, which is not that, fully immersive. Sometimes it's non-immersive, sometimes it's semi-immersive, but not fully immersive. And in the real environment, it's fully immersive because it's real, it's authentic. But in today's society, actually, it's more like a mixed reality because it's very difficult to distinguish our virtual life and our real life. But I think in the future, it's more like extended reality, which means we are not going to distinguish these two realities, but try to, to use one reality to help another and to get more extended experience or more enhanced, immersive experience. So move back to our studies or our research. In recent couple of years, we paid a lot of attention to, the empirical studies or empirical research in terms of the VR supported language learning. So we published a number of review studies, including one article in APSCE in 2019. And this is our very recent review study. It's going to be published by the International Journal of China Computer Assisted Language Learning. I would like to share a little bit about the research purposes and research questions and some methodologies related to our review studies. We actually conducted a series of review studies in this area. And the primary purposes are, including, for example, to postulate an analytical framework for understanding the publication trend, the methods, research foci, and promise and challenges in the field of VR-supported language education. We hope that we can map the current research trend and also the teaching practice in this area. And by giving a review of the present VR-supported language education, not only the research but also the practice, we hope that we can offer suggestions or pedagogical implications for our future language learning or language education. So these are the primary purposes when we started to conduct the review studies. So in terms of the recent published articles in International Journal of China Core, there are 4 research questions. We are first of all interested in the general research trend, including the yearly publications, the target languages, the research settings, and types of VR platforms or devices used in the reviewed empirical studies. And the second research question is about the research methodologies. So what kind of research approaches, research designs were used or adopted by these published empirical studies? And how about their data sources and how they conduct, data analysis? And third question is about the research themes reviewed by the reviewed articles or publications. And the final question is about the promises and the challenges of this very innovative language education. So in order to answer or address these 4 research questions, we mainly followed the methods of conducting systematic literature review. The very beginning or the preliminary study about the PRISMA analytical framework was published several years ago. So in their article, they actually mentioned about the 4 stages of conducting systematic literature review, including identifying the journals and also the articles, screening the articles, and check the eligibility of the articles, and finally decide what kind of studies should be included in the final literature review. So we followed their PRISMA framework, and also there's very recent review studies conducted by Paxito and his colleagues last year. Actually, they conducted a kind of review study about AR supported language learning. So, for example, in the identification stage, they screened about over 5,000 articles, and after screening, as you can see, most of the articles does not meet the requirement. And then after checking the eligibility, more articles will be removed and some other related articles will be included. So in total, 71 articles were remained. So that's a very actually laborious and time-consuming research procedure. In our study, we actually started conducting the review studies, I think, in year 2016. So in year 2016, there are a few studies published concerning the VR-supported language learning. So at that moment, we mainly focus on some well-established, core journals, for example, like Recall System a core, LLT, Calico. And we also noticed that Computers and Education is another international journal, published a handsome number of language, education or technology enhanced language education research or practice. So we included these 6 international journals. But recently, VR also becomes a very popular topic in China. So we also included some Chinese high quality journals, peer-reviewed journals. So in total, we included 12 journals and screened all the articles in these 12 journals by reading its keywords, abstracts, and so on. Then we try to screen the articles involving 2 sets of keywords. One is about technology and the other is about language learning. And finally, we included 69 articles, about 70 articles in 12 journals were maintained for further content analysis. After we selected the articles, we conducted the first stage of like coding and data analysis. It's called a preliminary coding and data analysis. So we form the tentative, coding framework, and we code 12 journals by the researchers independently. Then we will, discuss the disagreement and resolve the disagreement, and then propose the revised coding framework. Then we will move on to the formal coding and the data analysis part. And we will code all the publications by the researchers independently, discuss the disagreement and also resolve the disagreement, and finally form the final coding framework. So I'm going to share with you about our coding framework. Actually, originally, our research was driven by these 6 research questions, including the research trend, the methodologies, the research themes, and also features of VR or VR-supported environments, approaches of learning, or the theories related to the language learning in the VEs. And the final research question is about the promises and the challenges. But in our recent published, article, actually, we only included question 1, 2, 3, and 6, because 4 and 5 are also very complicated. So we are going to publish, the related results about these 2 questions in the, coming papers. And in these 6 main categories, we also have some subcategories related to these main categories. Okay, and also have some, specific definitions for these specific items. And for the first research question, for each subcategory, we also have specific items. And then this is the second research question in terms of methodologies. We analyze approaches, designs, data collection, and data analysis. And this is the main research themes. And these 6 or 7 subcategories actually is more like a grounded, based, like a grounded theory. It's mainly based on our content analysis. So it's not, top down. It's more like a bottom up peer kind of process. We read all the articles and try to first summarize the major themes of the article or the publications, and then we will discuss with the other panel members and to decide, what kind of specific topics could be, further summarized. Okay. And in this subcategory, and for example, language learner characteristics, it may also include other aspects, the subcategories. Okay. So this is the general analytical framework for doing the coding or for conducting the content analysis. During the data coding and analytical procedures, we realized that some data are, pure statistical data. So at that moment, we can use SPSS to analyze the statistical data. But for some non-statistical data, for example, the contents part, or we have to analyze the specific content of the publications, then we need to use NVivo to do the further coding. So today I'm going to share some of the results of our research. First of all, is about the general publication trends. As you can see, this is the number published by these 12 journals from year 2010 to 2020. The number experiences ups and downs. Particularly in year 2014, it seems this the lowest number of publications. So it's more like the stage of developmental stage of AI, artificial intelligence. Virtual reality also experienced the cold winter, alongside its development. But since 2018, as you can see, there's a sharp increase of the publication numbers. And if we go back, if we go on, in year 2021 and 22, I think that because of the metaverse, emerged. So I think there will be more publications in recent 2 years. So it's actually a very risky kind of research for conducting the literature review. Once you publish the article, it's about 1 or 2 years ago. Okay, so some of the technologies have already become obsolete. So you have to actually to jump on the bandwagon, very quickly and try to be in fashion. Okay, so it's very difficult to conduct literature review studies. And this is the target language, studied by these empirical studies. As you can see, the international journals, besides English and Chinese, some other foreign languages were also studied. Okay, but it's no doubt that English is the dominant language due to its, influence in different areas. But one kind of worthy point, point is about the increasing attention to Chinese learning with VR in different journal articles. Okay, so I think if I don't know whether how many the participants are teaching Chinese to the audience, to the students. So if you are interested in Chinese language learning or Chinese culture training, VR may be a very promising area for you to conduct empirical studies and to publish your related research findings. And for the research settings, like higher education, secondary education, and elementary educations were all involved in the empirical studies. But higher education settings still, the major research settings. There are a number of reasons. For example, I heard a lot of complaints from the parents and the teachers. They actually do not quite agree to use those VR gadgets when the kids they were at school, for example, like primary school students or high school students. So that's why I think one of the reasons that's why the higher education settings still the main research setting for conducting VR studies. Okay. And a number of platforms and devices were used by these empirical studies. So Second Life is the most popular one, but you need to pay attention to the self-designed, platforms. So it seems that Second Life itself may not be the best, or most suitable space for language teachers to conduct their, for example, instructional designs or to ask the students to complete the language learning tasks. So they may have some self-designed platforms or devices or programs and to better suit or fit their teaching objectives. And I would like to show some of the, screenshots of the interface used by those empirical studies. For example, these are a Second Life, for improving learners' negotiation strategies, and it's more like a English for special purpose, aviation English. Okay. And this is AR book used by some kids, in primary schools for improving their reading comprehension. And the HMDs were also used to help students to fully immerse, in the virtual environment and to learn the vocabulary, related to different objects in the environment. And there are also some open source VR platforms for example, to improve learners' foreign language learning. For example, this is a platform for learning Irish. And this is another one, is SVVR, try to improve learners' English public speaking performance. And some self-designed VR platforms, for example, for improve their vocabulary. So very brief introduction about the general research trend, and we move on to the methodologies part. So from this table, we can clearly see mixed methods were most frequently used by the VR supported language learning research. I think the possible reason for the wide use of mixed methods is due to the complex nature of learner interactions in this environment. Okay, and also, as you can see, 20 empirical research or empirical design were used in the empirical studies. And I think that the limited number of participants also made it difficult to conduct the large-scale survey studies. We also calculated the number of participants in the 69 empirical studies. The largest number is around 280, okay, no more than 300. So basically, the sample is quite small. So these are some quasi-experimental design. I think it would be useful for reference, if the participants you want to conduct empirical studies, particularly quasi-experimental, studies. Some designs are quite simple. For example, one group with VR intervention and one group without intervention. And for example, one group with AR storybook and the other with print storybook. So that's quite simple and straightforward, experimental design. And like this one, use SL and the other use another, normal form. And this group use SVVR and another group with PPT. And there are also some more complicated experimental design. For example, in the experiment group, they have different, groups, group 1, group 2, and group 3, but they use different task cycles, okay? So that's more interesting, I think. And some scholars also, integrate the formative assessment with the VR approaches. For example, one group is peer assessment based SVVR approach, and the other is non-peer assessment based. So I think this article or this publication is also very interesting. So I recommend it to you, and if you are interested, then you can read it again. And these are the frequencies of data collection approaches and also the data analysis approaches. So generally speaking, the empirical studies in international journals, they used more variety of data collection and data analysis approaches in their studies. And in terms of the topics or the themes, we also made a kind of mind map, to mapping the different areas. For example, the first topic is about affordance of VR for improving learners' linguistic skills. And from this chart, you can see the overall proficiency is highly or most frequently, researched topic. And then we have speaking and vocabulary. And there's only 1 or 2 research talking about translation or interpreting. But I think that use metaverse, maybe interpreting is a very promising area, because in the metaverse, people can organize different types of international conference. And then maybe the teachers can design some interpreting, practices in that in the metaverse. So maybe in the future, the number of publication may increase. And in terms of the non-linguistic skills, as you can see, communicative skills, most frequently, analyzed, and collaborative learning, cognitive attainments, and so on. And we also realize that learner characteristics or individual differences is a highly or frequently studied topic. So particularly including learner perception, motivation, anxiety, self-efficacy, and etc. Okay. And these are the design of language learning tasks in VR environments. So as you can see, the teachers or the researchers are very creative. They try to integrate, different language learning tasks with the VR environments. For example, like interaction tasks, information gap, reasoning gap, and also some role play, opinion exchanging, or even some treasure hunting, or like murder mystery tasks. Okay, very interesting, games in the VR environment. And some topics also, concerns the design and development of VR environments for providing a better, learner experience. And some studies were actually corpus or discourse driven. So they explore the very nature of the interactions in VR environments. And in some articles, they also propose some frameworks for analyzing, the discourse or the interactions in VR environments. Okay, so we shall move on to the fifth part. I would like to share a little bit about the C in VR at my university. That's a self-designed, platform for learning situational English, in virtual reality. Here I prepared a video.
北京邮电大学是教育部直属工业和信息
Sorry,
化部
only in
共建
Chinese,
首批
no
211
English
工程
version.
重点大学。外语教学依托学校信息技术学科优势，2000年录制了国内最早的大学英语网络点播课程。2007年，大学英语被评为国家级精品课程。2008年，大学英语团队荣获北京市优秀教学团队，先后有6位教师获得了教学名师奖。2012年，取得了国家级首个语言实验教学示范中心。情景英语虚拟仿真实验教学平台是我校经典课程情景英语视听说的拓展，旨在培养学生具有能随语境变化的语言实际交际能力。该课程获得了首批国家级一流本科课程的认定。本项目搭建的绘画仿真场景与教学内容相结合，有效弥补了英语教学中缺少真实语境的遗憾。项目以机场的国际出发与到达为研发内容，通过采用3D 建模、动画、语音识别、人机交互等技术，设计了套餐式搭配的10项任务、7种模式，完整还原了机场国际出发与到达的全过程，实现了语言教学实践情景化的学以致用。项目以线下和线上相结合，学生在线上进行语言操练，教师可观测其实验过程、学习动态，并实时跟进。有效解决了以往英语教学中只有视听而无真实语境的交际问题。创设的真实情境更具代入感，激发了学生的学习兴趣，为促进语言创新、实践能力和教学效果提供了有力支撑。项目彻底改变了英语教学中重词语讲解轻实景教学的局面，以交互实用为导向，以智能体验为特点，让学生在情景化、沉浸式的语境中操练英语。自动评分结合教师点评，使教、学、测、评同步并行，为多维动态的形成型教学评价提供了有效保障。目前，项目已完成了核心内容，并在我校部分本科和研究生课程中实际应用，获师生好评，达到了预期效果。
今后我们还将继续完善与拓展，创设更多实用场景，优化细节，充实内容，建设更具交互、开放、兼容的虚拟仿真外语教学平台，满足跨地区、跨院校、 化专业的情景英语教学平台的研发与投放。
Okay, so actually the platform was originally, inspired by our textbook edited by Professor Lu Zhihong. She's also the leader of our team. And based on the textbook, we designed and developed a platform for English language skill training. It's called ROFO. So on this platform, students can, practice and drill try to improve their, comprehensive English competence or abilities. And based on this experience, for developing such kind of platform, and we try to integrate VR with the language education. So we used the international airport as a main, setting and design different tasks, related to solving problems or practice English language, in such kind of scenarios. For example, we designed different types of scenarios at the international airport, like asking for information at the airport and how to check in and how to go through the customs and how to go through the security check and about the flight transfer or delay, and how to claim the luggage and to deal with some emergency, at the airport. How to check the traffic or hotel, or how to rent a car when you arrived. So these are 8 different types of scenarios. And based on these 8 different types of scenarios, we designed like word recognition, word matching, spot dictation, contextual interaction, like short answers, compound dictation, summary writing, verbal report, and a role play. So 10 different types of learning tasks in this self-designed online platform. We call it situational English in virtual reality. So in short, it's called C in VR. And we also conducted related empirical studies, for example, learners' conceptions of learning English or their engagement in such kind of virtual environment and other related, studies. Okay, so a very brief summary. In terms of the promise of VR for language learning, I think a number of scholars have already summarized, for example, to provide realistic and situational language learning environment where learners can promote their communication and interaction. And at the same time, some scholars also mentioned that VR provides a fail-safe learning environment, which can reduce learners' public speaking or foreign language learning anxiety. And in our article, we mainly summarize the 3 types of features of effective VR learning environments. For example, the 3D user interface with immersive simulation, and also the anonymity, afforded by the avatars, and also the synchronously interactive CMC environments. So these 3 different or major features of VR environments provide certain degrees of affordance, for language learners. But there are still some challenges. For example, the first challenge is that these types of equipments or systems are still not available to all those who are interested in learning English with VR, right? So how can make these devices or systems more affordable, accessible, and user-friendly? I think it will become a critical issue in the next few years, particularly with the emergence of metaverse. And the second challenge, I think, lies in the language learners. They need to learn more, for example, how to navigate the avatars in the VR environment. So it takes time for them to get used to the new environment. And the third one is also a very challenging one, that is the extra effort that language learners or language teachers, they have to make, because they need more actually workload, to design the learning tasks or managing the class activities or interact with students even after the class, because they are learning, in a new environment. So a very brief summary that I think that VR support language education, it consists of two parts. One is language education and the other is technology. So for language education, I personally think that we need more systematic research, particularly more empirical and longitudinal studies, to explore the very nature of language learning in such kind of new environment. And we need to spend more time to improve the instructional design. And we also need more, language education related pedagogical knowledge. As for the technology, I think virtual reality itself is becoming more mature. And the CMC, computer-mediated communication, is a very important technology for VR support language learning, but it's also quite mature now. But in the future, maybe like natural language processing and learning analytics, particularly multimodal learning analytics. So these two types of technologies are still, evolving and improving. So if we can solve problems with these two types of technologies, I think we may have more brighter future, in terms of the VR support language education. So I think this area is more like a cross-disciplinary area. So we need frontline teachers, we need English language teachers, and also researchers, in English language education. But also we need technical experts. So it's a kind of brainstorming area. We need different people work together to make VR supported language education more accessible, affordable, and learner and teacher, friendly. Okay, I also listed some main, references for your reference. Okay, so that's all about my presentation. And thank you very much for your attention. Professor Wu?
Yeah, thank you very much, Professor Zheng.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for delivering such a solid, fundamental literature review, research on VR technology. I just checked the Q&A on a screen. There's no question posted for you to answer. I would like to draw your attention, the audience. Do you have any questions for Professor Zheng about her talk today? Do you have any questions relating to VR technology and the meta-analysis? Literature review, systematic literature review on virtual reality. Do you have any questions for her to answer? Would you please seize the opportunity? If you are planning to conduct or integrate VR technology into your language classroom or into your can be any classroom, more than just a language learning classroom. Do you have any planning? If you plan to integrate VR technology into your future classroom setting, and you might want to take this opportunity to interact with Professor Zheng, because she's a very experienced VR language teacher. No? Yeah, then I have a one question for you, Professor Zheng. Thank you very much. First of all, you gave a very brief, but very concise, I wouldn't say brief, very concise introduction to AR, VR, and even metaverse. And then you quickly switch to your literature review, literature review papers on VR related technology, VR related tools. And basically, there are 12 journals included in your literature review analysis. And then later on, you introduce the platform, VR platform, developed by your team, by your university, Beijing University of Posts and Telecommunication. And you showcase how your department carry out or use the VR technology to contextualize language learning setting, which is very good. It's amazing. I was really amazed by the airport simulation, that platform.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, it was very, very impressive. Wow. I think how lucky your students have been studying in your program. So contextualized language learning. Wow, that's amazing. Oh, that's a question. Yeah, I see here. Yeah,
yes, I have noticed it.
Yeah,
so it's from Miss Li Dongmei. I don't know whether it's a teacher or a student. Yeah, or maybe, yeah. Professor Li Dongmei, could you, do you want to speak, in this conference? I can read your question. Do students need
Do
any
not think
device?
they have access to speak.
Oh, they cannot speak. Oh,
I don't
so
think they have
sorry.
access to speak. Mhm.
Okay. Okay, so I shall read the question. Do
Yeah,
the
please.
students need any device when they are learning on the platform you designed, like glasses for VR?
Mhm.
Yeah, actually, we do not need, the students to wear the goggles or some other, headsets, because our the platform is more like a desktop VR. So
Mhm.
the only thing that you need to do is to use the mouse, to navigate in that environment, and then you can use your mic to record and to interact with the agents in that environment, or maybe to use your keyboard to type in insert kind of communication. Because the very beginning of designing that kind of platform is we noticed that it's actually too difficult for all the students to wear kind of glasses or gadgets. Not only because of it's more expensive or not accessible to all the students, but actually it's a kind of obtrusive in classroom teaching. When we are when we teach students English or improve their English language skills, mostly it's like a physical interaction, okay, between the teachers and the students in classrooms, I mean. So if you wear other gadgets or some other devices, it's not that natural or authentic communication. So at the very beginning of the design, we hope that that type of desktop VR environment could be more accessible to more students. So they do not need to wear any kind of devices. Yeah. I hope I can, my answer addressed your question. Thank you very much, Professor Li Dongmei. Thank you.
Oh, she's a master student. Oh, sorry, master teacher. Master teacher
Master
from
teacher.
Singapore. Yeah, master
Okay.
teacher.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Any other questions? Do you have any other question for Professor Zheng?
And I want to add one point that, the platform is actually, it is very expensive to develop, or particularly to realize, that kind of environment. So the preliminary design is quite important. So because when the technical experts, they started to produce or to realize what you want to achieve, it's really time consuming and it costs a lot. So you have to think very carefully. And another point is that it's still going on. I mean that the project I presented to you is just the pilot study that we conducted. So we are now improving the environment, improving the scenarios. And we hope that we can add more technologies like NLP, for example, some conversational agents into the environment that will make the communication more authentic. It seems another question. There's another
from the chat. There's another question.
Okay,
from Carlos.
Yeah, Carlos. What would you say is the main advantages of using VR versus traditional ways in the classroom? I was wondering if the technology could give better support with learning difficulties of students. Yeah, that's a very good question. In my review study, I actually summarized the main advantages, and I talked a little bit at the end of my summary, at the end of my talk, but due to the time limitation, I did not elaborate too much. We summarized the three major features of VR supported environment. Just 1 second. Yeah, the first feature, as I mentioned in the PPT slide is the immersive simulation interface. So it can increase learners, their experience of immersion. And at the same time, it's a very, how to say, innovative and interesting environment. So to some extent, it can improve learners' interest in learning English, and also enhance their engagement, in the learning tasks. For example, we provide a kind of contextualized learning experience at the airport. So the learners, when they immerse in the environment, it seems that they are really at the airport, and it can prepare them, for the future communication or problem solving at the airport. And the second feature is about anonymity, afforded by the avatars, because using the avatars, you can keep anonymous. Yeah, that's not real you, in that environment. So you will never feel embarrassed if you make some mistakes. So it can decrease learners' anxiety in speaking in English or communicating in English. And third one is about the synchronous, CMC environment, which means that you can use that environment if it is connected to the, connected to the internet, and then you can communicate with people from other countries in that kind of environment. So it's very, very important for the language learner, particularly the foreign language learners, because that environment is an authentic, cultural environment. Okay. And your second part of the question is that for the learners with learning difficulties, I think yes, the answer is definitely yes, particularly with those learners, with very high level of foreign language speaking anxiety. Okay, because in the real life, people are worried about speaking in public, but in that kind of virtual environment, the learners, they may have the kind of encouraged themselves to speak, because they can keep anonymous. They are not going to lose face. Okay, so particularly with those students who are not that sociable or not that easygoing or open-minded, and I think it will be a space that they can really open their heart. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, self-disclosure. Yes, thank you, Professor Wu, for your addition. Yeah.
Right. Well, we are 10 minutes past 3 o'clock. Right. Pretty much, I think all the answers. That was very nice explanation. Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. If you have no more questions, I think I would like to close today's webinar. I would like to thank Professor Zheng again for delivering such a wonderful, inspiring talk. It's very very timely issue, and also it's very, very important skill in our language context. And also I would like to take opportunity to thank our audience, online audience again, for being here to join us this Saturday afternoon. Yes. Well, Professor Zheng, do you have anything else to say to the audience?
Yeah, I would like to, extend my great appreciation to Professor Wang, Professor Wu, and also technical expert today to support this webinar, and also all the audience online. Thank you very much for your patience and your attention. Okay. Thank you.
If you have any further questions, I think you will be more than welcome to have a personal contact with Professor Zheng. If you have any further questions regarding today's talk or regarding the use of VR technology into our classroom learning settings, yeah, feel free to contact Professor Zheng. Professor Zheng, would you please show your contact email again?
Okay, no problem.
Yes.
I will type it in the chat box.
In the chat.
Yeah. So if you have any further questions, you can contact me through the email.
Here, yes. It's in the chat. Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So it seems there's another announcement for the next webinar, right?
Yes.
On the screen.
Right, so next webinar is November 9th, 9th on Wednesday. I would like to make an announcement for our next webinar, which will take place on November 9th, Wednesday, from 3 to 4 p.m. 3 to 4 p.m. in the afternoon. The webinar will be conducted by Professor Nianxin Chen from National Taiwan University, National Taiwan Normal University. It's also a very interesting topic, emulation real-world context using social robots and IoT-based tangible objects to provide embodied and interactive learning experiences. Yeah, I would like to invite today's audience to join our next webinar again. Yeah. Right. Thank you very much. Yeah, Professor Chen.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for all the audience for being here with us. And if you have no more questions, I would like to conclude today's webinar. Thank you very much. Wish all of you have a very wonderful weekend. And would you please submit your feedback by scanning the QR code? Audience, would you please do us a favor? Your feedback is very important to us. I would definitely appreciate any of the feedback from the audience. Would you please submit your feedback here by scanning the QR code? Please, yeah. Your advice, feedback, comments are very important, means a lot to us. So please. It will just take you a minute. It won't take you a long time. Yes, thank you.